Okay, welcome back to the second recording. And on the second recording, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be deploying Wazuh, which is actually the host-based intrusion detection system, or what we're going to build into our SIEM. And we'll be deploying it on the EKS cluster, which we just deployed on AWS. Again, if you haven't done the exporting of the context, it is necessary that you actually do that, or you might run into problems trying to deploy wisely. Again, it won't know what to deploy wisely. Your code won't understand exactly what context are we looking at here. Where's the cluster, like the cluster name, the region, and those other details. Okay, so we will go into Waz's site where we have the deployment. You can see we can clone the repository, we can seed into that, and also do a few stuff. So first, let's get the repo cloned. I'm going to copy that command and go to my VS Code, and I'm just going to clear the screen, start up from scratch. I will paste this here. So what we're doing is just a minute. I don't want to put it in the same repository as in the same folder as my Terraform deployment. So I want to be sure that's okay. Yeah, great. This is my folder. So I'll put this in here. Cloning into that. Then if I ls, you would see I've got the Wazuh Kubernetes. So let's see it into Wazuh Kubernetes. Okay, clear the screen. Ls on this, we see we've got a bunch of files in here. Now let's do a bit of talking. If you look at the instruction in that in the entire folder, you would see this instruction MD. You would see a file that looks like this. So let's just talk about a few things. For the prerequisites, you need to have we need to have a cluster that is already deployed, and we need to be sure that we have everything that is required for that cluster to take the application that I want to deploy on it, which is Wazuh in this context. That's the prerequisites. For the overview, I'm not going to bore you reading through this. I would advise you go through it on your own. Just talk a bit more about the ports. So we're going to have a number of ports. We're going to have the Wazuh master, which is going to be on the pod, and this pod contains the master node, which is where we're going to have the master node, which centralizes and coordinates all other worker nodes like you'd have in any other Kubernetes deployment, making sure that the critical and required data is consistent across the node. Now, the number of index nodes, the number of worker nodes, to have consistency in terms of the coordination. This is what this will be doing. Then we've got worker nodes. I'm not going to touch on that. We've got the indexer nodes. For the indexer, again, this is a CM. So each of these it's got a function, a unique function. We will go through the deployment. We'll talk a bit more about some of the functions. We'll see that. Then we've got the indexes for the services. Then we've got the dashboard where we'll be viewing the CM which we've just deployed on the cloud. So let's go a bit more into the file and see what we have in the file and the folder. So we have in the folder. So if I drop this down, we've got the ENVs, which are the environment. In our context, we don't need the local because we're not deploying this local. I'm just going to remove that local. So remove -rf env local. We don't need that. Okay, great. So because we are using Kubernetes, so this is what we need. On the dashboard, you would see like any other Kubernetes definition. We've got the definition API version, we've got the kind deployment, we've got the metadata, which is the Wazuh dashboard. Then we've got the specifications. In this context, we're specifying, we didn't do this again. This was this they already did. We're just fetching this from the repo and working with this. Now, again, you can modify this. It depends on how advanced you've been able to go with this Kubernetes stuff. In my context, in my case, sorry, on this Wazuh here, which I have, which will be built into, I've made a bunch of modifications in those env files. So it looks different from what you're seeing in this just bare minimum, which had been defined by Wazuh. We've got the name, we've got the CPU, which is actually 200 million in this context. We've got the memory, 500 MI, that's the megabyte. Then we've also got the CPU definition and the memory for limits. Now, this is the request within the resource definition. For example, the node, we're making a request to pull for this particular dashboard. We need this quota from all we have defined within our EKS definition. If you remember the main.tf, we did specify specific definitions here. Now it will make sense, or you understand this better if we know what resources are available to T3X large which you can actually find out from the internet or either on AWS website. Going on, so we're requesting a quarter of the resources within those nodes to have that designated to the dashboard deployment. The same thing applies to the indexer. In this case, 1 CPU, 2 GB memory, and we can also see we've extended this to do a volume claim. Again, this is very important. Wazuh had actually designed this for us, correcting myself there. So we're doing a volume claim, and actually we'll be leveraging off the storage within our EKS definition or deployment. We do have a storage class. If we do a kubectl get storage, we will see we've got a storage defined for the Kubernetes cluster, and that storage is what Wazuh will be leveraging to deploy all these pods on. The customization definitely specifies what we want. Now I'm going to show you something, what I mean by I've done some modifications in that initial. Let me drop some of these things down. In this my deployment, if I go into customization, you would see it's different. Here you've got the storage class, you've got the indexer, you've got the dashboard, the master, and the worker. But in mine, I've added a log stash. You would see in customization. I've got log stash as well added. So this is actually extended beyond what you fetch from the raw Wazuh website. We'll be building what we've gotten clean to that level of maturity as well. So stick around. I'm gonna put this down. Moving on. So we've seen the customization, the storage class. Also the storage class, again, we're leveraging off AWS storage, which we've defined for the cluster we deployed. So again, you can see we're actually setting the reclaim policy to retain. So even after we delete the application, we're still going to have those storage retained. Now you might be wondering, why would that be the case? You probably would know that everything you're doing within those pods are stored in the storage. So even after you delete the cluster, maybe you want to redeploy Wazuh and leverage those storage so you have your data. Makes it easy to actually have that persistent data, which is basically what this is all about. So if you want to clean up correctly after deleting the cluster, you must remove the storage. If not, it's going to be costing you some money. Okay, so then we've got the master definition. We can also see the definition for the master. We have got the read write once as well. Then we've got the workers. So that's for the ENVs. Now within the Wazuh itself, we've got a bunch of folders. We've got the base folder, which is where the storage class is defined. Again, we are using our storage class. Okay, so we've got the namespace. It's going to be Wazuh. If you want to change this, maybe to something else, you can do that here, because we will have a new namespace deployed on our Kubernetes environment with the name Wazuh. Okay, then we've got the certs. Now the certificates usually are for the dashboard and the indexer. The dashboard should have its own certificate, so we can have this HTTPS thing for encryption. But we're going to actually create, there is a script to do that in here. We'll run the script to create the certificate for the dashboard and do the same for the indexer cluster. Then if I drop this, pull this up, go into the indexer stack, then we have the dashboard. Within dashboard, we've got OpenSearch. Again, if you've never heard about OpenSearch, probably you may have heard of the ELK stack. That's the Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. Or you may have heard of the HELK. Pretty much that's what your SIEM is built around. So in this context, we're using OpenSearch. This is AWS environment. Okay, great. Then we've got the dashboard definition for the deployments. Most of these will be making changes to them once we start getting to the point where we want to build this to a mature capability. I'm just showing this for now for a start. Then we also got the SPC for the dashboard. We can see that in here, we can do that Route 53 thing if we've got a domain which we registered for the dashboard. This is where you can actually change that. But in our context, we'll be leveraging off the load balancers to access this on port 443 and HTTPS. Okay, I'm going to close this up. Then the dashboard deployment, we will see all that specified in here. I'm not going to go into big details. It's fetching the keys that would obviously will be created within the certs and actually setting them or mounting them on the port here. Also for the password, we've got those secrets in here. It's fetching them and mounting them on the port as well. Okay, we've also got the SPC for the dashboard. Now for the dashboard, we can also see we've got the indexer as well. The cluster we should have for the indexer API, the indexer STS, then also for the indexer config, the internal users defined. Now, these users are actually within the application deployment. This is how the master node will know how to communicate to the worker nodes where we've got different resources deployed on. Then also open search, and we've got the index SBC as well. Now, beyond this, we also have the secrets folder where we've got secrets for the dashboard, the indexer. I would recommend, again, you would see we've got the key runner serve here. Mind you, this is not the password you're going to use to log in the dashboard. This password is set for the dashboard to be able to access the other resources within the deployment. If you want to log in the dashboard, we'll be using the indexer cred. I would recommend that you change this. This is the default password. We're going to stick to this just for the recording, but I strongly recommend you change this, which obviously you can do actually creating a new password and using basis for encoding to encode that and dumping that here. We also got the Wazuh API. We also got the auth D, then also the cluster credentials. Great. Moving on. Next, we've got the manager. Now, for the manager, we've got the config. For the master, a bunch of what we'll be doing as we mature will be in this particular file. We will make a whole lot of changes here because all our integrations are going to be done here, and not just here. We're also going to do and make those. Once we make a change here, we must ensure that it reflects on the environment definitions which we have in here. It must reflect on the EKS definition for both the whatever service we're making changes, in this case the master. Those changes must reflect in here as well, which you're going to see how that works. Then also we've got the worker, pretty much the same thing. Then we have the cluster definition. We've got the master, we've got the master as well. Now this is the STS and the SBC. Then the same thing applies to the workers. Then the customization. Now this is another file that will make a lot of changes in as we start advancing our Wazuh maturity. Enough with that ranting. Let's just get this bad boy deployed and see what it looks like at the bearable minimum based on what we've cloned from Wazuh without any changes. That's what we're going to do now. So we are in that folder. I'm going to clear the screen and just do an analysis on that again. So we're going to first create the certificate, and you would see there are commands here to do that in the instruction file. I'm just going to copy the first one to create the cert for the bit distracted. Create the cert for the indexer. I'll copy this command and I can run that in here. I will create the cert for the indexer, then also do the same, the cert for the dashboard. For the Excel, we'll use this script to do that. Okay, now if you have your own certificates, you can also bring in your own certificates and work with it. Again, but you have to make those changes within the customization file to know where to fetch the certificate from. All right, so we've created the certificates. Now we are good to run the deployment. So to deploy Wazuh on our Kubernetes environment, remember, you must be sure that you've exported your cluster context to your kubectl so it knows how to get that coordination done. Okay, we're just going to run kubectl apply minus. In this context, we're using a K, not F, because we're not going for a specific file. We've got all those files in the folder, then K, then it's in env, then it's in EKS. We'll run this. Now this is going to run the deployment. Okay, if you have not exported your kubectl context, you will have an issue. You'd see you've got a warning here. Now, well, I have got this fixed in this mature deployment. As we advance, I might correct most of those errors, which you would see in this raw bare minimum deployment. Okay, so now let's begin to check stuff up. First thing we're going to do is we're going to clear the screen. Maybe give it a second or so to deploy the stuff, but we can actually see the progression. So first thing, let's try to see if we have a namespace called Wazuh already available. So run a kubectl. Let's get maybe we can actually get the namespace. Then we can actually grab. Oh, we don't have any other namespaces, so I'm just going to run namespaces here. So we can see all the namespaces. We've got the defaults, which is for the cluster. We've got the node list. We've got the public, then the kube system, then the Wazuh, which is actually the most recent one here, 47 seconds at the time I run the command. Now the cluster is being deployed. Sorry, the application is being deployed on the cluster. We will keep track on that progression. So let's try and see if we can actually get the deployments. We can run kubectl to get deployments. Then we don't need the apps. It doesn't really. Then we pass the namespace. Now, if we don't put a namespace, you run into errors. just to show you, because we've got a bunch of namespaces there, so we need to specify the namespace. In our context, we want to check the deployment on Wazuh. Oh, my bad. Okay. All right, so we will see that we've got the Wazuh dashboard already good to go. It's up to date, it's available, and the 96 of age. Now we can go ahead and check for the services, but before that, let's get maybe the ports so we can see all the ports running. kubectl, let's get ports, the namespace Wazuh. So we can see that we've got the dashboard. That's the first one that it's already deployed, it's running. We can see the index of one, the first one is running. It's been, sorry, it's run, 0 is running, 1 is still being initialized, okay? Then we've got the other ones as well, all running. So this might take a while for the second indexer to be initialized and completely deployed. Then we can now go advance and start checking other stuff. But before that, for us to be able to access this over the internet, we need to get the services so we can get the load balancer for the dashboard, which is what we will use to access this. So let's run kube cutl again. Let's get in this context services, then 0 wide. We want to get the entirety with the external one as well, so we can actually have the URL to access the dashboard. Okay, we will see this is not the finest, but again, you would see that we've got the dashboard load balancer, which has this IP 172. Then this is the external IP. So this is the internal IP, the external IP, the external URL. Again, you can see this is on port 443. Remember, if you have your own domain, which you had configured for this, you should be accessing this over your domain. But in our context, if you don't have a domain, we'll be using the load balancer for the dashboard to access this because it runs on port 443. We can also see the 9200, which is for the API services. We will be using that as we advance. We can see the 1515, which is for the agent enrolling. Then 1516, which is actually for the agent communication to send back and forth to the master or to the cluster deployment for Wazuh. Okay, let's get onto our dashboard. We just want final verification to see if all the pods are running, all running. So we're going to open our browser and try to access that service over HTTPS. Okay, might not be a valid certificate, so you get this warning because again we're just using the Wazuh certificates. If you've got your domain with valid certificates, you won't be seeing this error thrown at you. So we're going to go advanced on this and accept the risk. There we go. That's our Wazuh application. It's been deployed. Wait for this to load. Then remember to log into this, like I mentioned, you can only log into this using the credentials. I will go into the folder, Wazuh secrets. The indexer credential is what you'll be using to log into this. So the username is admin and the password is this. I'm just going to copy that, open my browser, put in admin. I recommend you change this. Again, don't forget you have to change this. Now I can log into the dashboard services. I'm not saving this. And we will see what the application looks like. So this is our CM deployed on AWS. You can see it's doing the verification for all the services. And if it passed all of them, we should be good to go, which I think it will because we didn't see any error. If we have errors, then we have to start going to actually look into those ports and find out what those errors are. Lucky for me, I don't have any, but if you do have some, I'll be glad to get on and help you get those fixed or pass those. Currently, we have no agents, but you can see this is what it looks like. Now, off the back, this is not just some one-off stuff that looks like any other one-off solution that you'll see in the same space. This has a bunch of stuff going on here. And trust me, there's a whole lot more going on here. So we've got the open search here where we can actually discover to see everything that is actually going in through Wazuh. So we can actually, more like a data lake, everything just dumped in there. Then we've got the SIEM, which is what we'll be building to maturate to actually help us manage threats from a detection standpoint, prevention standpoint, and also from a response standpoint. Okay, we've also got the open source plugins for all their stuffs. Again, as we mature, if I have more time to record more videos, we'll be creating dashboards for us, which could be used by our SOC team to actually manage the entirety of our security operations. Okay, let's get into this and play around a bit. Security events. So far, you'd only see events from the master node itself, because again, if I click on events, you will see we've got a bunch of events. showing us from the deployment, the worker managers, the Wazuh manager worker, the Wazuh manager master. Now, these are just minor stuff coming in from checks on those pods. We haven't started maturing this. Remember, we don't have any agent yet deployed. And we've also got a query language here to play with, which is what you see in your normal ELB deployment stack. So I'm going to go back on this. Again, I can just go on the home button here, and we can see there's integrity monitoring. Currently, there is nothing here. We've got certain rules set. We can add more filters if we want to. It's just me playing around, rapidly showing you stuff. I could also remove these filters if I want to. I'm going to go back to that home. Policy monitoring, system auditing, system configuration assessment, some useful things as we mature. We'll be playing around with like the threat detection and response, where we see the vulnerability, we see the MITRE mapping, then also specific for regulations or regulatory compliance. We can see we've got PCI DSS off the box, NIST 853, GDPR, TSC, and the HIPAA. I had worked with a client on HIPAA, on GDPR, on NIST, and on PCI DSS as well, using Wazuh actually to help them achieve compliance. So you can actually do all that with Wazuh. Now, since we don't have any agents, to deploy an agent, we can actually click on the agent button, and we can now select what architecture we want the agent we want to deploy. We also got options for more. Now you can see that extensiveness that comes with not just a Windows or Linux or Mac. We're also going a bit more into the backpack space, like the Amazon Linux, Debian, Fedora, AIX, Solaris. Oh, that's pretty cool. Raspberry Pi as well. Okay, I'm stopping this recording here because I already hit the 20 mark above. The next recording, we will start maybe first bringing an agent, so we can now start seeing what it looks like by adding an agent, or maybe first mature this within the cloud infrastructure itself, because we could deploy an agent on cloud, the same VPC, then deploy Wazuh on that agent, which is what we're going to do to make it easy. But also, we will also be deploying my MacBook. I will be adding my MacBook, which I'm recording with, as an agent to this cluster, so we can also see every bit of activity coming from my MacBook on the Wazuh deployment, which you have here. Thank you for your time. Again, you might run into problems while deploying this. There are a bunch of ways you can manage those problems, and I'm also working to build scripts that you can use to manage your problems. If you let me drop stuff down. We'll be deploying health check later. Health check for Wazuh. If you see after install, we've got backups. We'll be doing backups as well for Wazuh. Then on that configure, we've got a bunch of scripts here. So I'm trying to make this easy. So once I push this to GitLab, you will have all these resources to manage your cluster and also your Wazuh deployment on cluster. You can see for the masters, the indexers, the workers, any issues you could run into, you could use it, describe, edit, make changes, get, and also view the logs to see how you can effectively manage that deployment on your EKS environment. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time. I'll be seeing you in the next recording, and I hope you love the content. If you do, please like and invite your friends, subscribe. We want to grow this channel this year, and starting from now to next year. And I'll be seeing you in the next recording. Peace out.